All right. So oops, can you go back just one little thing? The VI SPDAT, there won't be a test at the end, I promise, but it is it's a vulnerability index, service prioritization, decision assistance tool. Org code made this. Why it's so long, we don't know. That's why we call it the VI SPDAT, because I can't remember those other words. Go ahead. So things that we're going to cover, we're going to talk about coordinating entry. We're going to talk about the by name list and why we have that. We're going to talk about prioritization, and then we're going to do a bit of a demonstration on what it looks like to actually do the VI SPDAT. And please, if you guys have questions along the way, please unmute yourself, ask questions, raise your hand, throw the chat, whatever. I can't see all your faces, but I don't want you to go away not having answers to questions. Okay, I just messed this up. Hold on.
And Debbie, I'll help monitor the chat if someone puts some questions in there for you.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so what is a by name list? So our by name list, it's literally every person that we have been able to identify that is experiencing homelessness. And the goal is to update that in real time. We use that information collected and we share it with their consent. Everything is with their consent, but each person on that list has a file that includes a lot of their information that we need. So their name, their health, their housing needs, their homelessness history. And then it goes through a lot of questions about vulnerability. So we can kind of be able to assess their needs. We'll do the next one. So this is actually what our housing list looks like. So the names and who they're working with have been blocked out to protect the innocent. So if you look at the housing list, we have about 330 right now, give or take a little bit, on our housing list. They are all identified by status. So the fourth one over is status. These are all active. So active means that we have been able to lay eyes on those individuals. They are actively, literally homeless. We have seen them within the last 90 days. The other statuses that you would see would be inactive, which means we have lost sight of them, or they've moved out of the area, or they've been incarcerated for longer than 90 days. We'll move them to inactive. Pending means we've just put them on the list and we're moving them into the right bucket. Housed obviously means housed. Then at risk for this purpose is anyone who potentially is either sleeping in a hotel that they're able to pay for, but obviously they can't sustain. So that's an at-risk component. And then also anyone who is couch hopping. They're at risk to being literally homeless, but they're in a place that's not going to be their forever home. So also on this list, you're going to see over towards the right, you're going to see their veteran status. You're going to see whether their type is individual or family. These are all individuals. You're going to see chronic, yes or no. So chronic is someone that has either been literally homeless for a consecutive 12 months or 4 times in a 3-year period. And then their score. The higher the score, the more vulnerable they are. Keep in mind when we get ready to go through this assessment, this is, it is client-led. So if a person chooses not to answer a question, even though you know what the answer is, it's their answer for that moment. So a lot of times if we're not super careful and we're not working closely with that client, they may answer something and say, no, that's not an issue, when it truly is an issue. And then their score is going to be lower than reality. So keep in mind, you may do this and you may say this person comes out as a 4. 17 is the absolute highest you can get. but they may come out as a 4. Well, you know that they have a lot more issues than a 4. So it's not the only assessment that we use, but it does help us to start that process. So next. Excuse me. Okay, so why do we have a by name list? Is it for you or is it for me? It's obviously for both. It's a client benefit because that ensures all people experiencing a housing crisis are going to have a fair, equal access, quickly identified, assessed, referred, and connected to housing and assistance based on their strengths and needs. And that is actually the definition of a coordinated entry system. It's a community benefit because, as we all know, none of us can do this alone. We all need each other. We all need all of our different organizations. And so working together as a community to house individuals and families, clients, your program can't serve, could potentially be served by another program. So again, it's not all on you. So how does a household, whether it's individual or family, get added to the by name list? So basically the head of household will get connected to a provider that conducts the housing assessment with them called the SPDAT. I've already said what it stands for. So again, it's a triage tool. It's not the only tool, but it's a good help. So 0 is no issues. 17 is every possible issue based on this assessment, which we will show you. And so what it does, it helps us to prioritize those that are most vulnerable so that we can get them housed first. So once on the by name list, individuals or families are going to be prioritized for housing intervention based on their score. The highest scoring and most vulnerable individuals and families are going to be prioritized first. And again, the scores are going to guide what housing programs, if any, are most applicable. So if you are a 9 or above, we would basically say that you need some type of permanent supportive housing. And what that means is that is someone who is going to need case management along with housing assistance for an extended period of time. For those that are 4 to 7, 4 to 8 for families, 4 to 7 for individuals, it's rapid rehousing. So basically you've hit a bump in the road. You may need 6 months of assistance, but the goal is that you're not going to need assistance forever and that you're going to be able to get back as a functioning member of society without rental assistance and without case management. And then we have the 0 to 3 individuals or families, and those are really diversion. And that's kind of where it gets a little sticky because you may have somebody that comes out as a 2, but they are
That's what JD Ann says too.
But they are literally homeless. And so diversion still might not be an option. Also, in this assessment, which you will see, the client, the individual you're working with, the friend, however you want to call them, they have the right to refuse an answer. So you refuse too many times, you're going to get a really low score. And I understand we don't want to be re-triggering to anyone, but we want to make sure that we help them to understand that we're not trying to rehash bad things. We really want them to just be able to get the best picture of what they need. Okay, next. So how do you conduct a VSPAT? Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and Pam, if you don't care, I'm going to go ahead and share and just kind of at least talk through the initial part of getting into HARC. So as a person who can do a VSPDAT, you are going to need a HARC account. Pam can help you get that. It's not hard. You can actually go into HARC and do that for yourself, but I'm going to share a screen, see if I can make this work. Do we let them know that their scores, their answers? Yeah, absolutely. The question was, do we let them know how their scores are affecting? I think so. I mean, they're you want to do it in a way that's not going to be triggering, but it's still their score. And we can talk about that some more. But do you guys see, do you see my HERC screen? I can't see anybody, so I need a yay or a nay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So this is, if you go to HERC.nwa.com, and this is what their front page looks like. And you're going to want to scroll all the way to the bottom. Lots of great information that I would encourage everyone to look at and read. But at the very bottom, it says HERC provider login. So you're going to want to click on that. And then it's going to, this is where you're going to connect. So I have a username and password, and so I just log in. And so this is going to bring up just my feed. So it's got an activity feed. You know, it gives us information about individuals that we're connected with. Basically, so my face over here is on the right-hand side. I'm going to want to go to HERC Notes. Click on that. And then I would want to, I can either search for a client or I can add a client. So if I were to add a client, it's going to ask for their first name, last name, birth date, last four of their social, and then the email. I would click continue. It would start, it would ask a few more questions. Then it would ask you to do vulnerability, or not vulnerability, I'm sorry. It will ask for approvals. So you want to make sure that you have approvals. This is an individual that we were working with. I'm just gonna, so she's already done all the HIPAA and COPA and all the compliance things. And so then we would click under client and basic needs, and we would want, so there's, you can see her consents. She has already had a VA SPDAT done, but if you wanted to do one, it would say has not had one done, would you like to? And make sure that the consents are there. So if I were to click on that, it would start the process. So she's already had her VA SPDAT, but that doesn't mean it's the same process. So this top part, it's very much just what you would say. I would encourage you to kind of know these two paragraphs and be able to talk to the client that you're working with and not read it verbatim, but you want to get pretty close. You're going to ask them, do you want to take this survey with me? Yes or no? And then they'll start to ask questions. Do you have an email? It'll talk about who the interviewer is, your agency. It'll ask about date. It'll ask about time. It'll put their name in. Then it starts talking about what language do you feel best able to express yourself, how old you are, what is your date of birth. You want to make, even though it feels redundant to say how old are you and what is your date of birth, we want to make sure that, you know, I don't know, the older you get, sometimes you forget. I have to ask my husband sometimes how old I really am. What are they consenting to participate? This question right here where it says, do you feel safe right now? This is one of those questions where individuals will be like, well, yeah, I feel safe. I'm in your office and, you know, the door's locked, whatever. But the question really is, when you leave the office, when you leave wherever we're doing this assessment, are you going to feel safe? Are you going to feel safe tonight? And so that's where that question is. So sometimes you have to rephrase the question just a little bit to help them to understand. Then they're going to ask questions. It's going to ask questions about, even if someone is not with you, like, what does your household look like? So if we were looking for housing for you, are we looking for housing for you, one person, or is there a partner and children and all the things? So this, and I'm not going to read them all, but it's, it goes through all of their specifics: name, birth date, age, ethnicity, children, same thing. Let's skip down all of that. Has spots for about 7 children. Okay, then the question is, where do you sleep most frequently? And these are all drop-down menus, so you can click through these pretty fast. But typically, it's going to be either a place not meant for human habitation, in shelters, and then you would just answer that question. It says, for this question, anything other than shelter is considered to be high risk, and therefore a score of 1 is provided. That's kind of how the scoring starts. How long has it been since you lived in permanent stable housing? And so you're going to answer that first question is about days, months, years, and then you can break it out into days, weeks, months, years. That's how we determine chronic status between this and this third question. How many times have you been homeless? In the last 3 years. For this individual, it's 2 times in the last 3 years. Then what's the total number of months that you've lived on the streets or in shelters? That's a question. We don't want, again, we want to do as few of refused as possible, just because it messes with the score. Have you been continually homeless for a year? That also plays into the chronic or not chronic status. And you can read all of that when you open one up. And then it starts to talk a lot about a person's health and safety. So in the past 6 months, how many times have you, and there's about 5 of these questions, received health care at an emergency room? You just ask the question just like that, and they're going to answer you. In the last 6 months, how many times have you been taken by an ambulance to the hospital? Same question, same, just it's however many times they say. How many times in the last 6 months have you been hospitalized as an inpatient? How many times in the last 6 months have you used a crisis service, including sexual assault crisis, mental health crisis, all of those things, prevention hotlines? And then in the past 6 months, how many times have you talked to the police because either you witnessed a crime, were a victim of a crime, or alleged perpetrator of a crime, or because the police told you to move along? So if someone's homeless and they're hanging out somewhere that they really are not supposed to be hanging out at, and police ask them just to move along, you can count that. Then in the last 6 months, how many times have you stayed 1 or more nights in a holding cell, jail, or prison, whether it's short term or longer term for a serious offense or anything in between? Then it starts to talk about the client's vulnerability. Have you been attacked or beaten up since you become homeless? Have you threatened or tried to harm yourself or anyone else in the last year? Do you have any legal stuff going on that may result in you being locked up, having to pay fines, or make it more difficult to rent a place? It could be anything. It could be warrants. It could be pending charges. It's really just about, is there anything that's going to come up when you try to apply for an apartment? Let's see. Does anybody force or trick you to do things you don't want to do? So this is very much about victimization, exploitation, trafficking. It's not a trick question per se. It's just, is someone making you do things you don't want to do? Do you ever do things that might be considered risky, like exchange sex for money, run drugs for someone, have unprotected sex with someone you don't know, share a needle, anything like that? Again, this is about their vulnerability, whether it's an addiction or trafficking or domestic violence. Lots of things go into that. Then it's going to talk a lot about socialization and daily functions. So do you owe someone money? Do you get money? Like whether it's Social Security, SSDI, do you get a paycheck? Those kind of things. Then do you have planned activities other than just surviving that make you feel happy and fulfilled? It's about personal satisfaction. Let's see, are you able to take care of your basic needs? So bathing, changing clothes, using a restroom, getting food and clean water. Is your current homelessness in any way caused by a relationship that broke down, an unhealthy or abusive relationship, or because family or friends caused you to become evicted? Have you ever had to leave an apartment, shelter program, or any other place you're staying because of your physical health? So this is not about so much about an addiction, but about physical health. Do you have any chronic health issues with your liver, kidneys, stomach, lungs, or heart? If there is a space available in a program that specifically assists people that live with HIV or AIDS, would that be of interest to you? We have special grants. It's called HOPWA. So for individuals who that might be part of their barrier or need of extra assistance, we have grants specifically for that. Let's see. Do you have any physical disabilities that would limit the type of housing you can access because you can't live on independently because you need help? When you are sick or not feeling well, do you avoid getting medical help? Female, are you currently pregnant? Has your drinking or drug use led you to be kicked out of an apartment or program where you were staying in the past? Will drinking or drug use make it difficult for you to stay housed or afford your housing? Then it starts talking about trouble keeping housed because of, first one is a mental health issue or concern. Second one is a past head injury. Third one is a learning disability, developmental disability, or other impairment. Do you have any mental health or brain issues that might make it hard for you to live independently because you need help? Are there medications that a doctor has said that you should be taking that for whatever reason you're not?
Excuse me, Debbie, Rachel has her hand raised.
Yes, Rachel.
Thanks. Sorry, I can wait until the end. It's about number 13, Debbie. So if you want me to wait, I can.
There's only a few more and then we can
Okay.
go back, if that's okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Just don't let me forget because I will forget. So any medications you're taking that the doctor wants you to take that you're not, any medications that you're taking incorrectly, and then has your current period of homelessness been caused by an experience of emotional, physical, psychological, sexual, or any other type of abuse, or by any other trauma that you've experienced? And then we do some follow-up questions just to help us, again, find out more information about the person so we can properly serve them. So what is your gender? Do you identify as transgender? Have you been in the military? We want to identify our veterans. If you are, what's your social security number? That is important to develop to determine eligibility for veteran services. What war era did you serve in? What was your character of discharge? If you were in the reserves, how long were you in the reserves? How many units did you do? Did you serve in combat or a war zone or receive hostile fire or imminent danger pay? That has a lot to do with the services that the VA can and cannot offer based on what their degree of service was. Then talks again about combat related situations. Then asks for your citizenship status. Have you ever been in foster care? There are at least 25% of our homeless have been in foster care. Have you been in jail or prison? Do you have any health insurance? If so, what kind? Are there housing options like shared roommate that you would be interested in? Do you have money coming to you on a regular basis? And that could be whether it's SSI, SSDI, any of those types of things. Again, are you waiting to hear back from a disability benefit application? Then we ask about pets. What kind, how many? We want to talk about race, ethnicity. On a regular day, how can we find you? Is there a phone number of someone else that we can get in touch with to let them know we need to get in touch with you? An email. Do you have any agencies that are working with you? And then what kind of things do you need right now? For example, we may not be able to give you housing, but what else can we help you with? And then, or what other resources can we get connected with? And then finally, other notes or observations. And I will say that this is the most important part for me anyway, because as we're going through all the information, the more notes, observations that a person can give us, the better it is for us to be able to make sure that we get them in the right bucket. It could be, they have all of their paperwork, which is really important when you're trying to find housing, or they don't have all of their paperwork, but the agency they're working with is helping them with XYZ. Vulnerability, those kind of things, it's super helpful. Okay, let me see, I'm gonna go back up. You ask a question about 13. It says, are you currently able to take care of basic needs like bathing, changing clothes, using a restroom, getting food and clean water, and other things like that? What was your question about that?
This is a question of physical ability, correct? Not.
No, not necessarily. It could be, if you're sleeping in your car, you may not be able to have access to a shower.
Okay.
So, maybe we can't find you housing, but we can get you connected with, I don't know, the day center or
Right.
Genesis Church or somewhere that maybe you can get some clean water and be able to change your clothes and use a restroom.
Okay.
Those kind
Thank
of
you.
things. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, going through all of that, it takes all the answers into consideration, and then it creates a score. If you are a 17, it means you are over 65 and have it's called the trifecta. Basically, it's trimorbidity, but basically it's every possible vulnerability that you could come up with, you have, and you're over 65. Individuals that score super high, we know that they are, that they need more case management. Some that we work with do not want housing. They just don't want it. But we still, as a community, we still should be able to serve them with the other things that they may need to find other resources. Do you guys have any questions so far? It's a lot of words out of my little mouth.
Debbie, I've got a question.
Yes.
Where I get tripped up, you kind of answered the other notes and observations. I just always am like, what do they want to know? I mean, I typically put it in there if they're document ready, like kind of a little bit. I don't know if you want a lot or just a little or in between.
I don't necessarily want, a huge paragraph, but anything that could help us to be able to identify their vulnerability. It's very hard to get this assessment because their mental health needs are so great. Well, then we're going to try to contact, whether it's one of the mental health facilities to try to, do we need to get this person into inpatient? Do we need to, those kind of things. A lot of times they may not call themselves a household, but it's helpful to find out that two people travel together. So we're not working on a 1-bedroom or, a place for just one person when there's really two.
Yeah. And then some of my guys that I'll do this on, they will not score 9+, but I know they're in need of permanent supportive housing. Do I need to put that probably in the notes and observations?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's super
And then,
helpful.
And then another thing I come across a lot is people whose VI SPDAT is outdated, like it hasn't been redone in a while, and I don't know how to redo that and still keep their history.
So I believe when you can go back to their basic needs in the housing, there is a spot that says, do you want to redo the VI SPDAT?
Okay, perfect. I knew there was a way to do it. I just couldn't remember where to find that. Okay.
We really want to make sure that everybody, when they get ready to do that, they just do those first set of questions, because what we don't want is because we know that our clients move around and see lots of organizations. We don't want lots of duplicates, because then it just becomes really hard to keep up with contact information and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing you can do is, if you have access to their VI SPDAT, like you can do in the housing list. Pam, is there a way to click back on the housing list? Or I guess I could do it too.
Oh, the, what we were just looking on the PowerPoint.
Just the HARC list, yeah.
Okay, yes, 1 second.
So when you have access to the housing list, which not everybody does, but if you were to say this person, say this first person, female, is Debbie Martin. If you clicked on my name, it would take you to the full VI SPDAT, and then any notes. You can update their information right there as well.
Will it recalculate their number?
It won't recalculate their number, but we are able to, if you change the date of contact and add information, it will bring them back up to the top. And as we go through them with case conferencing, we can say, all right, this person, and then maybe it is absolutely, we need to do another VI SPDAT. Really, and we haven't completely figured this out yet, but VI SPDATs really need to be done yearly. But the problem is it becomes really triggering for clients when we want them to do the assessment again, and they feel like we didn't connect them to any resources, because it's not like there's a ton of housing out there. And now they're like, you want me to do this all over again, and you still didn't help me the first time. So it gets a little hairy when we ask that, but does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So on that, let me see if I can show this piece. So see over in where it says housing, and it says you've completed the VI SPDAT. Over on the very far right, it says start over. So you can just click that and literally start over.
Okay. And that will not erase just their history. It just will let me redo just and update that VI SPDAT. Perfect.
Yes. Do you guys have any other questions?
I do. I have a quick question. And so I'm new to the area as far as working with the homeless population. And I do know that there is a shortage of housing. So if we encounter someone who is, say, 16, 17 on the score, how long would it be before there was stable permanent housing for them on average?
That's the $1 million question. Honestly, so if somebody is 16, 17, kind of our unofficial process is we will, if there are spaces available at New Beginnings, and that is a good match for them, we will talk to New Beginnings. We'll see if there's any spaces open. We'll try to get them into New Beginnings as an option. It's not always the option it's not always the path that they take, but it's better than being on the streets with lots of medical and health issues. And then when they're at New Beginnings, we work with, our New Beginnings works with them to get all their documents ready. We also have, periodically, we have homeless preference slots that we use in, for case conferencing through the Fayetteville Housing Authority. And so if we have an individual that is scoring really high, part of the issue is if we don't have the case management to back that up, that person's not going to succeed. And what we don't want to do is we never want to set someone up for failure. So there's a lot of working parts.
Absolutely, and I understand that. Also, we're specifically starting a group working with HIV patients in the area. And you did mention previously there are special funding. So when you indicate that on the form that they are a person having HIV, will that automatically factor into their score and their accessibility?
So yes, it does factor into their score. So when you do an assessment, it goes into, let me see if I can pull it up. I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so when I pull up the housing list, if I click filter, it'll go into what's called a pending. And in that pending will give me individuals